embarrassing. Okay. Hi. Welcome, Julie Pinsonneault.
Hi.
Welcome to
Awesome.
Pinsonneault. Welcome to Way Off the Record. I almost wore my Adidas too, but instead I'm
Thank you. I'm living in this. This
other
is my
thing.
second skin now, at least.
It looks good on you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good. I just before I was speaking to you, I was tuned into, Lady Gaga's concert that she put together in benefit of
Yeah.
all the essential workers. I thought it was a fundraiser like normal concerts are, but they've actually raised all the funds already. So what they're doing is they're just streaming the show for free, and they're just asking people to do things like take pledges to stay at home or to support their local charities and things like that for frontline workers. So I thought, wow, that's pretty impressive, and kudos to her for putting that together.
Yeah. God bless Lady Gaga, man. Shit. Um, how are you doing? I want to talk to you about, being alone in London. Not alone, but you're sort of trapped there. I know. How are you though?
I'm doing pretty good. I have to say I have my good days and my bad days, or I'd like to say my good hours and my bad hours, because all these things bleed together now. As you know, there's no such thing as time anymore.
Time or days of the week. I know. I feel this. It's this weird kind of limbo. Are you sleeping okay?
I would say that's probably the one health check that I don't have. I've never been a great sleeper, so that's tough. I think you have that issue too, and a
Yeah.
lot of people, even if they didn't before, are feeling a little existential about going to bed every night. But I would have to say, as long as I supplement myself with activities that keep me productive slash allow myself to give myself some downtime or to feel a bit of despair when I need to and not beat myself up about it,
Yeah.
then, you know, everything is pretty okay. It equals out, I guess.
How I'm curious to know what the scene in London is like versus I'll talk about New York after you talk about London, but like what's the general vibe? Are people wearing masks? Are they, distancing properly or what's going on?
Yeah, I think it depends on where you live and what activity is going on around you. So I live in North London. I live in a pretty busy place, Archway, and I'm right on the main strip. Actually, the building I live in is right next to the Archway Northern Line station.
Oh,
So people are still, using the tubes, and there's lots and lots of grocery stores and corner shops and kebab shops and all that kind of stuff here. So in my immediate area, it's still really busy. I was just actually outside for a second before we got on this call, and there's a kebab shop right across the street from where I live, and the guys there have been working, as far as I can tell, pretty much 24/7 since this started. So
wow.
it really depends on, like I said, the area you're in and what's going on.
Mhm.
So I find it a little bit scary when I go outside in my immediate area, because there's still lots of people walking around, and I assume that most of those people are going out for essential goods or for food or that sort of thing. But it doesn't make me feel great about, wanting to go out of my daily constitutional, because I have to sort of get out of the fray in
Yeah.
order to find some space where I can actually breathe and walk and keep that social distancing. Once I get a little bit deeper into the neighborhood where there aren't shops, then I'm fine. But I would say it's really a mix. And like I said, I'm trying to give people the benefit of the doubt. If they are gathering, it's usually because they're trying to shop for something. So
Are they wearing masks? Most people or
I would say maybe a quarter of people are wearing masks.
oh,
It's not something the UK government recommends or mandates here. So I've recently taken I can't get a mask. I mean, I can't procure things here, even though I have a bunch of grocery stores around me. There's still no toilet paper. The food's back, luckily, but the cleaning supplies and the hand sanitizer and the paper products are still not readily available. So I've sort of taken to putting a bandana around myself when I go out to the shops.
good.
I mean, it's more just to remind people not to come close. I actually had when I went shopping, I try to go once or twice a week. I mean, I'm really trying to follow all the guidelines because, as you said, I'm here on my own.
Yeah.
So the last thing that I need is to get sick, and then I'm sure my friends would help, and there's definitely, services for that sort of situation, but I'm trying to avoid that as best I can. And also, I feel like we all have, we all have an obligation to each other to try to make sure that we don't get other people sick. So
Right. Exactly.
I could be healthy, I could be a carrier walking around. So I'm trying to do the right things. So that's pretty much why I wear a bandana when I go out. It's more to remind people, there's something going on. I'm aware of it, so please stay away.
Exactly. So I had an interview with my friend Brennan in Paris, and in France, or at least in Paris, they have a form that they have to fill out that says exactly where they're going, what they're going for. They can't go more than a kilometer away from their house, and it's enforced. And he's American, but he's been living there for like 4 years, and he said it's very, it's difficult in one sense, but it's also really necessary to do that and to actually enforce it. And of course, the thing that I immediately go to was like, imagine that going on in this country. I mean, there are still all these states that don't have stay in place orders and are having these like,
Florida just
like,
did you see that today? Florida just reopened the beaches.
Yeah, in Florida. Yeah, great. I know.
Insane.
I honestly, it's like, that's the thing that keeps me up at night, is because so many people in this country are not taking this shit seriously. We're going to be in this situation for years, like a year at least. And that's, that's not heartening, but let's talk about something fun. What are you doing? I know that you're working from home. I know I want to make these, I want to try to make these like hopeful in some way. Where you going, girl?
I'm coming back. I'm dimming my lights. I'm being a bit vain. I'd like a little bit of backlighting here. Thank you.
You look gorgeous. You look gorgeous. Your hair's getting long.
The first time I've done that in a month, so I appreciate the opportunity to have a reason to do that.
Yeah, I took a shower earlier. I shower like every couple days now. It's like, what's the point? But
Yeah.
What are you doing? And I know that you're working from home. I want to talk to you about how that's going, but I also want to talk to you about, what are you doing? One of the things that I'm trying to do with this particular series of episodes is learning from my friends and having my friends impart, sort of advice or things that they're doing personally to sort of cope with what's going on, and self-isolation and all this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, so a couple things, and some of this will sound repetitive to people, but staying active, if you're an active person, is really important. So I always really, value a workout, really into strength training and things like that. So it's really important that whether I'm going outside for the day for my daily walk, or whether I'm staying inside, to make sure that I'm at least putting in a half an hour to an hour of doing some sort of exercise. And there's tons of programs out there for free that you can use. Like today, I didn't really feel like doing that much, so I used an app called FitOn, which they have tons of different kinds of workouts for free, and you don't need any equipment or anything. So I did like a 25-minute HIIT exercise,
Right.
which I would never do normally, but it just kept me up. It got the endorphins going. And then I was like, okay, well, now I'm in a good headspace to sort of plan for the rest of my day, or maybe do some more productive activities than I would have otherwise. Because if you get up every day and you're sort of in a malaise, and you're like, it just becomes very difficult to fill in the time. And I've had days like that too, where I've just been like, today I'm watching TV all day and I'm not doing anything. But I find the days that I make myself a bit more active, and I, maybe cook a healthy meal or something like that, it helps to just push me along for the next couple of hours.
Yeah.
I would say for me, the other big thing that I'm doing is I'm trying to write as much as possible. And I actually had a writing group today. There's a group of people that I meet with every couple of weeks, and we review a couple of stories that the individuals, or maybe they're working on a couple chapters of their novel or something like that. And so we get together on a big Zoom chat, and we do some writing exercises. We have a teacher that that sort of conducts the entire exercise. And so that's been helpful for me because that gives me a deadline to reach, to say, okay, well, in 2 weeks, I have to submit a story to this group and it's going to have some scrutiny. For those people who don't maybe have that avenue where they've already signed up for some sort of course or have a group they can do that with, another thing that I'm doing is I try to write sort of a short blurb and put it on Facebook every day, which is a poignant moment that struck me during the day. So that could be something coronavirus related, or it might not be. It's just something that resonated with me in the day. And so I, you know, it's like, usually it's a few sentences. At times it's only one sentence, but it's just something for me to sort of have a cathartic experience of whatever I'm feeling for the day. And then I put it out there for people to read. And I've gotten great responses from that. You know, somebody will say it resonates with me, or they might reach out to me to see if I'm doing okay. And it just makes a one-on-one connection, which is really important at this time, being distant. So,
I love those,
you
by the
know,
way. I love reading those every day because because I adore you and I want to know that you're okay. And but also like in terms of like the actual writing itself, it's I know that there's a lot of thought that goes into being that brief, you know, and to really you're somehow able to convey in just a few sentences like really intense feelings. And it's I'm really grateful that you're doing that. I'm grateful that I didn't know that you were doing an online writers group. I know that we talked about, I think you were you in a class before this whole thing happened, or like an actual
yeah. So,
class?
yeah. So that's exactly how this group came about. Is I was enrolled in a class, and and we sort of split off. The class ended, and I suggested to the teacher, because she's absolutely fantastic, a woman named Amita Murray. So check out her stuff. She's absolutely amazing. And I approached her as class was ending, and I said, you know, I've done a lot of these courses before. You know, it's sort of like adult learning. It's like I'm not enrolled in an MFA or anything. I just go because it's an avenue to get your work critiqued and to just get
Right.
some energy from some other, you know, amateur writers. And I said, you're sort of the best teacher I've ever had in these types of, you know, situations. You know, these 10-week, 12-week, you know, courses. Would you consider, you know, teaching something outside of this course? Maybe we can get a couple people from our class that we think are good writers to join us. And
Mhm.
so we sort of did this ragtag, you know, thing. And so we were meeting in person. But obviously, once everything went on lockdown, it was either we put this group on hold, or we figure out a way to facilitate it. So
Right.
we've been doing it on Zoom, and it's actually worked out really well. Like she was a bit nervous about it, like having a bunch of people on video, and were we actually going to get, you know, the commentary that we needed in order to progress our pieces and stuff like that. But it's
Yeah.
actually worked out just fine. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've been talking to everybody, you know, online and offline about the fact that uh, I've had more phone conversations and or Zoom conversations, video conversations than I've ever done in my life. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like it's the one thing we have now. Like this is what we have, and I know that I find great comfort in seeing your face and hearing your voice. And I think there's something really beautiful about that. I think everyone I've talked to, it feels the same way. You know, it's just like, okay, this is what we have. So let's use technology. It's very Jetsons, you know. Um, and I love it. Tito Lapachat is under my feet. I'll put him up on the lens if he lets me. Um, but yeah, I mean, we have to do what we can because we don't really have any option, you know. I'm glad to hear that. Do me a favor, and after this, send me.
But
Go ahead.
oh, sorry, I was just going to say, you know, sort of bouncing off of what you just mentioned with video chat. The thing that I'm finding amazing about video chat, obviously, it's not something that we would normally do, even though I've been doing it a lot more since I live in London. So I'm from New York, as you know. So when I moved over here, and I've been here for almost 5 years now, I used to FaceTime people probably the first year that I got here. You
Yeah.
know, you miss home, sort of like being at college for the first time, and maybe you call home every weekend or something like that. But that sort of like, it phases out after you sort of move on, and everyone's, got their own life activities going on. It doesn't mean you're any less friends with anyone. It just means that there's a lot. So I found that this situation has made it so I've reconnected with people on a much more intimate basis than I had in quite a while.
Yeah.
And that feels really good. I mean, it sucks that we can't touch. It sucks that we can't see each other, but to have these conversations, and people are really asking you, how do you feel? And they mean it. They want to know what's going on with you.
Exactly.
And there's
Great point.
intimacy there that I just think is gorgeous,
I do too, and that's a great point, because I completely agree with that, and I think that, you know, there has to be, we're in like a humanity, we're in like a humanity is being reckoned with right now, and we have to come out of this not just about, getting over the virus thing, but I think that there's this really beautiful thing going on with humanity in general all over the world. Things that we will no longer tolerate, things that we want to foster and grow, like human connection. It's ironic that we're finding that out via technology, but it's like,
Mm.
it's what we have to deal with. And I think there has to be um, there has to be lessons learned from this whole thing. And I think all of us, everyone I've talked to, and people that I follow online and stuff that I don't actually know, that's the hope. We have to have some good come of this. And I think already there is. I think, there's already a large amount of the population in this world that's like understanding, like, okay, so here we are, and these are the things that we have to do, and it's fucking torturous on some level, but it ultimately, even while we're in it, right, we have to take away as much good as possible in all this.
I agree. Although, there's still the same forces working against us as always. When have to hear about the discord and the confusion that our political leaders are trying to just spew all over us. So we have to remember that they're not actually the ones in power. You have control over your life and the way that you react to those things. And so just because they're making decisions that impact your life does not mean that you can't live a life with dignity and integrity. It
Right.
doesn't mean that you can't follow your own moral code and do the right thing. And it can be really difficult sometimes when you're like watching the news and you're just so exasperated, and you go, how are these people living without empathy? I don't understand.
That's a
But
good.
that they're trying to take that humanity away from us, and we just have to remember, no, at the end of the day, I'm living around other people like me. I'm not living with this person who's making decisions up on high that is so out of touch with
Right.
the world.
Right. That's a beautiful way to put it. Yeah, I mean, we're in the thick of it, and that's a great way to think of it, is like, Trump doesn't, or there's lots of people, not just Trump. Um he doesn't, luckily Trump doesn't have the power to like open states, open states back up to business, and all this stuff. And you have that DeSantis clown in Florida opening up the beaches and stuff, and that's unfortunate. But I think the majority of states are, they're forming these coalitions. Have you seen this? Like New
Mm-hmm.
York, the tri-state area, and then California and Washington and Oregon and whatever, and then things in the middle of the country are forming their own sort of coalitions to get the supplies that they need to control stay-at-home orders and stuff. And we're kind of on our own, like the states are kind of on their own, but at least there's these coalitions of states and groups in the country. That gives me some hope. I mean, you know it's fucking crazy.
Yeah, for sure. You have to look for leaders who are acting like leaders. I mean,
Yeah,
because there's so many who aren't. It's just it's absurd to me to think that there is no real coordinated federal response in the
yeah,
states.
I
I
know.
mean, and the reason for that is, he as he always does, as Trump always does, he's just trying to throw chum in the water, and he's throwing spaghetti against the wall, and he's seeing what sticks. And
Right,
so people like us, we can see that, but
right.
then but then the governors or the mayors or the people who are in charge of these local jurisdictions, that just means they have to work twice as hard in order to look after their constituents. And you're right, it's very heartening to see that they're coming together and they're going, this is not only my job, this is my moral obligation
Right,
to
right.
do this. And then, versus someone like a Rick DeSantis who can't even put a mask on right. I don't know if you saw that video
I
today.
saw that too. Yeah, like the whole bottom thing, just like flapping in the wind and stuff. And he stood there like waiting for the camera crew to say, go or whatever, like a fucking moron. Oh my god, it's just it's crazy. I
It would,
uh,
it would be a parody if it weren't happening in real life.
exactly, exactly,
Like,
exactly, exactly. All these things, like there's so many things that have been happening. I mean, for 3 years, but especially in these last couple months, like if this wasn't real life, it would be hilarious. It would be a Chappelle sketch, but here we are. Tell me about you said you're cooking more tonight, because I know that you've been ramping up your cooking skills before all this. So what are your favorite recipes?
oh boy, I don't know if I would even really call them recipes, if I'm honest, because it's mostly like, what can I run into the grocery store and get and run out? Because
Thank you. Yeah,
I'm not trying to be alarmist, or maybe that's not the word for it. I'm not trying to overdo it, but I am trying to be conscious of the fact that I don't want to expose myself unnecessarily, again, for the reasons I mentioned before. So really, when I go into the grocery store every single time, because I'm a meat eater, so I'm going for my protein, I'm going for my vegetables, I'm going for some basic things that might like spice up, vegetables, and then, my grain or potato or starch that I'm eating. So
yeah,
I'm finding that I'm just sort of making things up as I go. So I'm buying a lot of. I actually bought a box of spices that got delivered to me from this place that operates at a borough market, and so
ooh,
that's been really helpful because basically you can just throw, like, it's like I have like a Peruvian like spice rub. So for instance, I can just like throw that on a piece of chicken and bake it, and then like make a side of beans and put some olive oil and salt and pepper and things like that. Jalapenos are amazing. You can add them to pretty much any vegetable or meat dish and just get a little extra pep.
when
So
you
I wouldn't say that I'm necessarily a cook, but
but no, you're doing it. Like I'm a big Mother Hubbard cook. Like whatever's in the kitchen, I'll just like try to make. I'm curious to know, when you cook with jalapenos or any sort of hot pepper, do you use gloves, like rubber gloves?
I I don't. And I'm not sure if I'm sure you're editing this, right? You're going to edit this, so you can either keep this in or you can.
I I can't really edit the videos, but
All
but
right.
but you can
I
be
just, I just trying
really.
to think of how personal I should get with this,
Well,
but
I was going to tell you that I jerked off one time after using habaneros, and I was fucked for like 2 days. So how
yeah.
about that?
I mean, I basically Yeah, I mean, I basically was going to say something similar in that I did the same. I wasn't jerking off, but I put a tampon in, one of those ones that you have to push up in there.
Oh,
Yeah, and that was a five fire alarm for a while.
I'm really glad we can hear that, because I think people need to know this. Look, my podcast is all about just the only thing I really edit out is like when I make a snorting noise or whatever, I go on and on and on about some bullshit. But like it's about just we're all human beings. We all go through the same shit. So you can be as free as you want, as free as you're comfortable wanting to be. So I'm glad you shared that.
I still gotta cook. I still gotta cook. I'm still gonna bleed. At the end of the day,
Exactly.
I'm a
Exactly.
human being.
Exactly. Um, are you in touch like video with Tor and you know, the other folks that we know that live there?
Yeah, in fact, I had a video chat with Tor today for the first time
Oh,
around 5 o'clock our time this evening. So she's doing really well. She's, you know, bunked up with her boyfriend, which is amazing to me.
oh, I
Um,
didn't know this. Woo.
yeah, yeah, she's got a Craig in her life, and Craig is a fantastic guy. He's also I think he's from the same town that she is in the north. And they knew, like, I don't know if they knew each other. I feel it was maybe if they did, it was an acquaintance thing, but they reconnected recently, and they've
Mhm.
been together for months. So they're self-isolating together.
Oh,
So that's amazing. She's working her ass off because she works for a private healthcare company.
oh,
So, and she's project managing things. So it, you know, she's saying the time scales that people want things done is just so accelerated, and the budgets that they're working on are just so big.
right.
It's quite a lot of pressure. So she's working a ton. But I mean, from my perspective, if you don't have kids, I mean, working if you're able and you still have a job and all that kind of stuff is a godsend because it
Yeah,
distracts you from everything else that's going on.
yeah, me too. Knock on wood. So far, the work is picking up.
Although my job's coronavirus related, so that doesn't help, but
That's right.
it does keep me busy.
Tell me about, like, we talked earlier in different conversations about what you do. You don't have to name the company, but what you do in terms of corporate communications vis-a-vis COVID-19 and how that affected your work and insights you have.
Yeah, so you know, I do employee communications for a global financial firm. So we've got about 11,000 employees all over the globe. We have, I don't even know how many offices, but I mean, when I say all over the globe, I mean all over the globe. So
Mhm.
when this outbreak started, obviously it affected Asia first. And
Mhm.
so me being in the middle time zone between in London and our headquarters is in New York, you know,
Mhm.
I was getting up at 4 a.m. for 4 a.m. calls so that I could help Asia sort of figure out what their employee communication strategy was going to be when they were starting to work from home or cycle people out of the office, or you know, what happens if somebody tests positive in, you know, one of our employees, or somebody that works in a building that we, you know, we also have we're also leasing. So it was a lot of on the fly work that was going on where we were meeting, you know, every day, and there was immediate needs that were happening every single day that we needed to address.
Right.
And you know, eventually most of Asia started to work from home. Things settled for a little bit, and then it became apparent that the disease had spread and that it was going to become a much more serious thing in a lot of other locations. So obviously Italy was the first sign that the disease had spread a lot farther than we originally anticipated. And so at that point, the company started to take a more sort of holistic approach to what should we do regarding this pandemic, because really our leaders in Asia were sort of coordinating and managing. I wouldn't say in isolation, certainly they were, you know, coordinating back with headquarters, but the decisions they were making were a lot more local.
Yeah.
And then it became an issue of, okay, well, now we need to start making decisions as an organization as a whole. Like geography is starting to be a moot point. So how do we
Right.
make sure that all of our employees are safe around the globe, regardless of whether, you know, it's an acute issue or not?
Right.
And so if I'm honest with you, it actually became a lot more difficult at that point because there was guidance being issued or not being issued because people didn't really understand the sort of the magnitude of the problem until it hit them,
Right.
right? And
Right.
so once it traveled to New York again, where the headquarters was, that was, and you and I have talked about this before, that was sort of the Rock Hudson moment for my company, and I'm sure a lot of other American
Great
global
point.
companies,
Yeah.
where it's like, and until it starts affecting you, you don't really realize what's going on, and then it becomes this issue that is what's the word I'm looking for? Not ominous, but you know, it's an issue above all issues. You know, it's the holiest of the holy, and so all of your work and everything you do and every decision that you make filters through this you know, cloth of this cheesecloth of, if you will, of
Yeah.
coronavirus.
Yeah.
So, so you know, at a certain point, they eventually made a decision that all employees globally were going to work from home, but it took a very long time to get there.
Yeah.
longer, than it really should have.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now we're getting to a point where our colleagues in Asia have been working from home for like 3 or 4 months. And places like Hong Kong, they've really gotten over their curve. And so they're really anxious to get back to work, not just because from an individual perspective, but from a cultural perspective. A lot of the way that business is done in Asia is face to face. There's a lot, it's a lot of reading people in person. And so the requirements are a lot different. And so now the company is starting to sort of go the other way around, where it's saying we need to go back local again. And we need to start letting the local leaders decide when employees start to go back and what does that look like? Are they on a rotation schedule? What do we need to supply to them? Is it hand sanitizers or government regulation for masks? Do people feel comfortable taking mass transit, things of that nature?
Mhm.
And so we're about to issue the next set of global guidance, which is, again, to allow the local leaders to sort of petition to open these various offices. And if I'm honest, I'm very nervous about that, because I think it took a long time for us to get to a point where we said, everyone globally, if you can work from home, you're working from home. It doesn't matter, because again, I work for a financial firm. We're not in manufacturing. Most of us don't physically have to be in the office. Is
Mhm.
it a good thing for us to be in front of customers? Is it a good thing for us to interact with our colleagues? Of course, all of those things are good, but they're not necessary.
Right.
So we're on the precipice of sort of testing this very fragile situation we're in, which is everyone has followed the rules. We're trying to be good citizens. And now our companies are starting to say, but the economy's stupid. And I'm getting really nervous about that, if I'm
Like
honest.
what
And
now? Like what's
yeah,
what do we do now? Yeah.
yeah.
So
For me, I'm just like, well, why don't we continue to be safe? Let's just continue to be safe
yeah.
for a while. Because again, financial services, to me, it's not a necessary thing. Of
Yeah.
course, I say that and I still have a job. If I said that and they wanted to lay me off because they can't afford to have the company up and running anymore,
Let me just ask. So do you have um the only word I can think of is cognates. Do you have people in these other regions that are sort of your cognate? God, I can't think of the word. Like other people, like what you do. Is there someone that does what you do in Asia and South America and Europe and stuff that you liaise with? Because you brought up the whole cultural thing, which
yeah.
it's one thing to do like broad corporate guidelines, but when you're dealing with so many different cultures and ways of actually being human, like how does that work?
Yeah. So the way that we're set up is that we have various teams, local teams that are set up, and this is going to sound, really the way we label this sounds very 1984, but we have local committees called the Infectious Disease and Pandemic Committee, right? And that's so that we have an Asia one, we have an EMEA one, which is Europe, Middle East, and Africa, and then we have an Americas one. And those teams get together every day and they talk about what the issues are. So it'll be a conglomerate of a business leader in Hong Kong and in Sydney and Beijing, et cetera, et cetera. Plus you've got your operations teams, you've got a communications person like me, you've got an HR person, you've got a facilities person, and they get together every single day and sort of talk through the issues. And there's one person that leads that's in charge of putting an agenda together every day. And that happens in every single region. And then twice a week, representatives from each one of those regional groups get together in the global infectious disease and pandemic group and talk through the issues in that group. And then based on that, and that's chaired by the head of the entire company's HR. So she reports directly into the COO of the company and is on the executive committee. And so then she takes the issues to the executive committee, and they meet every single day and they discuss what the issues are and then what actions need to take place in terms of that. So it's a constant churning, a constant discussion. We're trying to organize it as best as possible because, as you can imagine, there's various questions bubbling up from employees all over the place. And so all we can do is sort of try to put a dragnet around it and say, how can we as a team be as coordinated as possible and get as much information out to people as possible and make decisions as quickly as possible.
Right.
And so that's why I'm a bit concerned about It made me feel better when we had that blanket decision of everyone's working from home, because it gave us a repose, right? It gave us a chance to say, let's regroup and figure out what might be next.
Yeah.
And now that we're putting it back to the local teams, all of that's still going to have to filter up to the global team before action is taken. But we've already set the precedent or the expectation with employees that things will change for them locally. And so it's going to take a long time for that to go back. It's a weird situation to be in.
I mean, it is.
And I should say, you asked if I had counterparts, and I will say,
yeah,
somewhat. Yeah. But the communications team is the internal communications, employee communications team that I'm working with is very small. We don't have a representative in Asia, so we sort of have a cousin who is like in PR that's helping us out there. I'm the only one in EMEA, and then we have one senior person in Americas. So if you're thinking about how many questions do 11,000 employees have, and you have basically 3.5 people to answer those questions.
Wow.
It's not a big team.
I mean, I totally hear you, and that seems completely overwhelming in terms of the numbers, but I do wish that, the American government and the UK government would take some pointers from that, because it would be a lot. I think we wouldn't be in this mess that we're in had we had some structure to this whole pandemic. You know what I mean? I don't know. It just seems like again, the states are on their own, and Christian just came in. Hey, Christian.
What?
I'm here with Julie Pinsonneault.
Hi, I can't come in because I have to take off.
Oh, right. So, shit. So, Christian works in a vet.
He's got his fit.
Julie.
Can you hear him? He's like, hi.
What's up, baby?
He's, this gives me,
Wait, before I just need to say to Christian,
yeah.
Fiona Apple is giving me life right now.
I've heard amazing things about this album. I haven't heard it yet.
Right?
Oh my God. Oh, it's the best.
I'm not naked, but I still have my skirt. I like taking them off at the door, but I've been listening to it all fucking morning.
You have?
Yeah.
Amazing.
It's
so good.
It gives me goosebumps, and no wonder the bitch took so long.
I can't fucking wait to hear this album.
No, it's amazing. Julie, I love you. Be safe. Come home. That's all I'm gonna say. Wait, are you recording?
I'm recording this.
Oh, hi.
Come back after you shower. And...
Oh, okay.
Oh yeah. So, thank you, by the way, for that, because I've heard nothing but raves about this album of hers. So Christian works in a vet's office, and they've cut down the numbers of hours that they're open and the number of staff and clients and stuff, but he still has to go there twice a week and has to ride the subway, and the subways are not that crowded anymore, but they're all metal, and everyone keeps talking about the virus can live for 8 days on fucking metal. And so we've had we've had talks about just you don't have to touch anything when if you do it right. But I worry, I mean, he's in sort of healthcare adjacent, with not people but animals, and it appears that animals don't get it. But the owners of the animals, the staff, the doctors and stuff, and it's we're doing what we can, but it's very concerning. And to the point earlier that you made, okay, so the majority of those of us that can afford to be working from home is a good thing, but there are deli folks, there's a few delis open, the grocery store, the pharmacy, the liquor store, which thank God is considered essential. Cheers. And there's lines in front of all of them. Cheers.
Yeah, and I think that was kind of what I was trying to say about the fact that I work for a financial firm.
Mm-hmm.
I don't consider any of that essential. Yes, of course, we keep going back and forth about this argument about getting the economy back open. But we have already proven as a firm that the vast majority of anyone that works for a company like mine can do it from home.
Yeah.
I mean, one of my colleagues, her husband is like, I don't know, a day trader. I think he does like, he's one of those guys that trades like sugar and those sorts of resources or whatever. And so he's up at like 4 a.m. and he's got all these big screens and he's doing whatever. They FedExed him a whole setup and he's down in his basement doing his thing. And I'm not saying that that should be like what we do in perpetuity, but this guy can still make money for his company, but he
Right.
can be home and he can be
Right.
safe. And
Right.
their infant daughter doesn't have to worry about him going out and commuting from Connecticut to New York every day. And
Right.
so that also saves somebody like Christian from having to worry about there being people on the subway that don't need to be there when he's on the way to work. And so I'm very, if I'm honest, I'm very upset about the fact that these types of companies, the company that I work for, are starting to make those moves. And it just seems to me unnecessary.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. And, Christian does a lot of work from home. He's like he's like a manager now of the front office and stuff. Um, and he does a lot of work from home, with telecommuting and computer stuff. But there is, the whole reception idea, in the front of any office and stuff. And I just feel like, to our point earlier, this is the time when we have to rethink, at least for now, and again, not in perpetuity, but we have to rethink how we do shit, and the fact that there's still, folks that can't work from home that, have to ride the subway or the tube or whatever. And it's just like, um, it's going to take a toll emotionally, I think, with everyone. I think it already is when we're confronted with, okay, so this is how we've been doing things for the last 3 months, and let's let's rethink how we're gonna frame our businesses and our lives and stuff. That was a long-winded way of saying nothing, but you know what I mean. Like, it's concerning, to say the least.
Yeah, it's I guess that the real concern comes from the fact that let's not lose the momentum that we have right now.
Right.
Because right, usually what happens is, we haven't hit our peak, or we are hitting our peak, and then the assumption is that things will start to go down, and so companies are starting to think about, well, let's lessen up the restrictions, let's start to open things, and the economy's got to start going. And I agree, people need to work. I get it. I completely and totally get it. But for businesses like mine, that is not required. Or
Right.
maybe we're losing a little bit of income, but in the long run, you're not going to end up with a bunch of sick people, or you're not going to end up impacting your local healthcare systems. Then let's be more cautious than we're being right now, because, and everybody keeps talking about this, everyone's not gonna all of a sudden go, it's summertime, we're in the parks, we're like riding the subway and we're going to work. And even if we're on rotation schedules, and even if we're supposed to be social distancing and stuff like that, that's just inviting in the next wave of disaster to happen to
Right.
us.
And to that point, we only need to look to 1920 Spanish flu. So
Mm-hmm.
I hope I'm getting the dates right. Yeah, so it started in like 1918, and they thought they caught it all, and then everything went back to normal, and there was a second, much more vicious wave of infections, and millions of people died, in this country. So it's, it's just all there. Like, we have history to to look to and to get guidance from, and I don't see a lot of that happening on the federal level anyway here. It's just fucking crazy.
I agree. I would say one thing in terms of leadership that made me smile today was during my writing group, because obviously because I'm out here in the UK, and for those who don't know, the Prime Minister here, Boris Johnson, was in the hospital for a while with COVID.
Yeah.
He caught it, and now he's out and he's back to work. But one of the people in my group who's British was like, "So Boris Johnson seems a lot more human now that he's come out of hospital." And I thought, again, it's that Rock Hudson moment of it's got to affect you.
Yeah.
It's got to become real to you in some way for you to really understand the severity of the situation and the urgency with which to act. And so
Yeah.
people like you and me, who are naturally empathetic people, who are like, of course I'm going to do the right things. And it's not just about me. It's about preserving my
Right.
community.
Right.
It's about making sure that, we come out of this thing stronger and better and kinder. There are other people like a Boris Johnson who needs a kick in the dick before they're going to realize that it's an issue,
Yeah. Has he though? I haven't really read much about his the way he's like handled this whole thing and how he's behaving now. Do you think, I mean, has he sort of like had a enlightenment kind of moment?
I mean, I don't know about him particularly, but I just know the guidance coming out of the government, like the fact that they've extended the 3 week the quarantine for another 3 weeks. The fact that he's
Okay.
not using as much bravado as he was before he went into hospital, like Trump is, where every other day he's going, we need to open up and like everybody protest or whatever. Like, Johnson is not really doing any of that anymore.
Yeah.
I think he always really, for a while, he was taking his cues from Trump because he was like, whatever Trump is doing, I can do it at a less ridiculous level.
Yeah.
The sentiment is still there, but I can say those things because something more absurd has already been said across the ocean.
What's
The hoodie and my shorts, please.
this one?
And that.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. I'm gonna have to go in a minute though, because I have a video
Yeah.
chat with New York, Connecticut, and California soon. My best friends from college. Yeah,
This has been a talk
which
that
is wonderful.
it is that we can do this. It's really great to have you on the podcast. I mean, we have our own relationship, thank God. But I think it's really enlightening and helpful for other folks to listen to different points of view and people that live in different parts of the world and how they're all coping with this. And I thank you so much for doing this. And we'll talk plenty like after this.
Yeah, this has been really fun. I hope that I've been coherent.
You've been gorgeous and coherent and everything and very helpful. And I think very soothing for people, honestly. And keep writing your Facebook things, your little posts and the writing group, and let me know how that's going. Oh wait, before you go, I'm gonna try to get him
Oh.
Tito. He is.
Oh, he does not want to be on screen right now.
He's actually being pretty mellow right now. He has his moments, but he's been a great comfort to both of us. And there he goes. Julie P, I love you, and we'll
I
talk.
love you too. Okay. Love you, babe.
Love you too.
Be safe.
You too. Oh.